think.
Okay, we've started recording. And then live transcript.
There you go.
Thank you, thank you. As you know, I need constant supervision. I appreciate the help. I need all I can get.
Don't we all?
All right, so my friend Corbin Moore gave me this slide a few years ago, and I have incorporated it into every presentation I have given on social studies, because for quite some time there has been the marginalization of social studies. And Robert Marzano did this building background knowledge book a few years ago, and what he determined is that 55% of the academic vocabulary a student needs to succeed in college comes from the 4 disciplines in the social studies. So I always like to remind any administrators out there that if you want a literacy coach, you want to improve literacy on your campus, hire a social studies teacher, because it turns out we do it all. All right, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. The last point I want to make is that 85% of test scores are based on how well students know the vocabulary of the standards. So if you're at a school like me, where the principal says you have to write the standard on the board, you don't have to write the whole thing out. Just simplify it in student language and make sure you're teaching your students all of the action verbs in the standards, whether it's describe, whether it's analyze, whether it's list, whether it's discuss. That is the important stuff, and we'll see your scores go up. Okay, so John gave me this protocol, I want to say last summer, and I started experimenting it and using it. And what I realized is it would be most useful for helping students make connection between historical figures and historical eras. And this, as it turns out, is one of the most difficult parts of social studies to teach. And my big suggestion, I am lucky I have this wonderful AP language teacher next door to me, Holly Abdul, and she dives in deep with these archetypes and the hero's journey. So all of her students that I share know all this stuff. They've been getting it for the past couple of years in her class. And what the AP, the College Board, released with the last version of their test is only 15% of APUSH students are answering these questions where they're making connections correctly. So that's my justification for using this protocol. I will get complaints from teachers that say, oh, it's too Englishy. I don't want to teach like that. I'm a history teacher. I just want them to learn the facts. Well, you really have to connect the facts to what you already know in order to lock them in your long-term memory. So here is the recipe card for the Archetype Foursquare. The steps are quite clear. You're going to give your students a list of archetypes and historical figures. You're going to help them identify relationships and similarities. The students themselves will note those connections and collect the dots in their little small group discussions. And then you will ask them to explain their reasoning in writing. And there's no set template for the Archetype Foursquare. I have used Iron Chef. I have used the Freyr model. Today, I think we're going to use the Freyr model just because it is the simplest to use. So I'm still admitting people. Wow, we got a lot of people in this room. And I'm switching between screens. I can see you in the chat and I can see you in the waiting room on my big screen when I look up, and I can see my presentation on my laptop's little screen. So thank you, Adam Moeller, for providing these directions. I am graphically designed impaired, and I like to steal the work from all other people who are more gifted in this fashion than I am. And Adam was so kind as to build the slide for me. So world history is full of archetypes, both in characters and situations. Pretty much every revolution, whether you're talking about the English, the American, the French, the Haitian, Latin American, Mexican, Russian, and not to mention all of the African colonization and decolonization conflicts that we are supposed to teach in the wonderful world of world history. I also like to stress that this framework is great if you are teaching sort of missteps in history, like the Cuban Missile Crisis or perhaps the Watergate scandal. And pretty much every presidential scandal would be well suited for this, because you have the Alexander Haigs jumping out and saying, "I'm in charge, let me take control." So what the Archetype Foursquare does is it helps students apply what they know, what they've learned from a unit of study, by sorting these historical figures into concepts, conceptual tropes, commonly found characters and situations that we see in literature, TV, and movies. So I have used this in several ways. What I would suggest is thinking of this like a Frere friend, thinking of this like an Iron Chef, where students are going to have to talk in groups before they write everything. And they're going to have to kind of come to an agreement on who is what. So I'm going to take you through a few examples that my students have generated, and then we will dive into our own creation. So let me see. A question in the chat: is this mainly for middle and high school students? So Adam, I know, has done it in his middle school students. I have done it extensively in high school. I would love to hear from elementary school teachers who are using it. I know that one of the videos that I will provide is a Chef Boyardee commercial, so it can be simplified and used with elementary students. All right, so I've assigned these Archetype Four Squares two ways. One, you can see on the left-hand side is my group assignment. So I'll get the groups together and I'll assign them the various historical figures that they are going to sort into the concepts and explain why Abby Sayas is this type of person and Admiral Horatio Nelson is a different type. Then you can also see I've assigned it as an individual assignment. I just simply put my student roster up and I tell them that they are the number on the spreadsheet is the number of their slide, and I give them a person that they're going to research and then label or categorize on the archetype scale that I am going to give them. So I've done this both ways. I've started off as a group assignment because what I have found with my students is they are very reticent to jump out with an original thought lest they be made fun of by their peers. So if they can talk in small groups and actually say, this is why I think this person fits with this archetype, and they can kind of vet themselves first, then they actually write a lot more and explain themselves much better. So moving on. So this is an Iron Chef example where you can see the last bullet that Ariana gives me is she clearly labels Francisco de Miranda, who was a Latin American revolutionary leader. She labels him as a martyr, and she explains that it's because he faces death bravely and he died for the cause. So this was a jigsaw assignment where students were looking at they had one person from a Latin American revolution, and they had to give me more information about which revolution were they part of, what were their roles, and what were their accomplishments, and lastly, what was their archetype. And I gave them a list of archetypes to go along with this. So this is an example from the French Revolution. And you can see that the student used an image that I gave them, the little sage with the graduation cap, And that is this French revolutionary Gabriel Ricchetti, if I'm saying that correctly. And you can see this is very simply the Freire model. The students are asked to add an image, icon, or emoji that represent this person. I like to see all three. Then they explain from the definitions that I have provided to them what archetype is represented by that person. And then they provide some rationale for that, where they explain why the person fits. And this says he was a French politician, he was part of the National Assembly, he assisted in drafting the Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizen, which granted civil rights to some commoners, blah, blah, blah. This declaration made a huge impact on the French Revolution and the ideas of democracy. Then they do another representation. So Gabriel is like Yoda, and Yoda is also an example of a sage, since he's a wise person and makes, or I guess alien, and makes important and well thought out decisions. Gabriel was a wise decision maker because of his work on the drafting the Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizen. So now this one, you'll notice, was part of the group setting, but the student has put their name on it because I asked them to do 4 people in their group. So sometimes they divide up the labor, each kid will do 1. Sometimes the whole group will come to a consensus before they put it on the slide. All right, and then this is a version where I made up my definitions, I made up my archetypes, and I would totally recommend doing this if you want to measure the content that the students have learned. Deb, I'm gonna send you, I do have some example of archetype charts and definitions for you. They're linked in, we'll get to them later. So this one is my list of Mexican Revolution archetypes. And we had spent a long time on the Mexican Revolution. We spent at least a month on it this year. And the kids did a great job of basically labeling these people. I gave them a list of the people we had learned about from a movie we watched called The Storm That Swept Mexico. I jigsawed my students through this content, and each kid did a children's book on a Mexican revolutionary leader. They did Insta stories on the soldaderas. We spent way too much time on the Mexican Revolution, and newsflash, it was because I didn't know anything about it. So I had them read a book called The Underdogs in their English class, and then in my history class, we covered a lot of the content. So we dove in deep on the Mexican Revolution this year. And then you can see here's a student sample where I've gotten an image, an icon, and an emoji. This is Victoriano Huerta, and he is a traitor, right? He orchestrates the 10 tragic days, which basically takes Madero out of power and has Madero assassinated. So, and what I love about this rationale and support is they say in the film, the storm that swept Mexico, it says Huerta was the one who planned the 10 tragic days. And it also says that Huerta was a traitor because he went against the US and asked Germany for arms. So the students telling me, yes, I actually paid attention in class, which I love as a teacher. And then I don't know if the student watched all the Godfather movies, but they correctly characterize Fredo as a traitor. So this student tells me that they understand Victoriano's role in history, and they can also name another historical figure that is like him. So, and this is from my friend Adam Moeller's 8th grade class. Adam, do you want to unmute and talk your way through this?
Yeah, Scott. So in my class, I actually use this as an introductory lesson, and I wanted the students to learn more about the signers of the Declaration of Independence. And so what I did is I combined an Iron Chef with the archetype lesson that Scott has been discussing. And so what I did is I made up my own archetypes, and I had students read these quick biographies on ushistory.org. and I had them write down 5 facts, and then I had them think about, which archetype would you apply to this founding father, and then why, and then who is somebody that that you can connect this founding father to today. And so this was done in and I've been trying certain lessons out with certain classes, and this lesson was done in probably 25 minutes right here. And I had students work together to do this. And they just, with a quick lesson on archetypes and the reading, I thought they did a fantastic job for 8th grade. So.
And I just want to call attention to your slide layout. My slides are just like me, white and bland. I have no graphic design skills. So I'm totally impressed with how you managed to color code and put boxes in here. How long did it take you to create this slide?
I don't know, a minute.
Oh, I hate you.
Sorry.
All right. So moving into the bland slides. So here is kind of your quest today. I have given you 4 slides, and we're going to try and review. Oh, I think I should have gone into student mode for this. This might be difficult. You might have to click on the links now. So I've given you a timeline of the events of Watergate. Let me see if I can make this smaller. I hate this big bar up here. How do I get rid of this bar? Okay. So I have given you several sources to click on and review. And this will hopefully take you down memory lane of what actually happened in Watergate. You see, I've given you a list of archetypes: the burglar, the listener, the actor, the obstructionist, the investigator, the minister, the fighter, the plumber, the traitor, the crook, and the hero. And I've also given you a link right here. You can click on, whoops, and you should be able to go and see the most common 8 character archetypes from the hero's journey. I also have given you these, let's see, figures from Watergate. And what you'll do is you'll use the definitions, the characterizations of these influential figures, and compare them, categorize them with the archetypes that I've given you. So let's see. And there's 2 readings there. Again, I teach high school, so I expect them to have not only read the textbook, but also some of the supplementary readings I've given them. Here's the list of historical figures. Now, if I go this way, you should be able to draw and add a picture, emoji. You can add a text box and type in here. And then Adam, can you tell me, how do I see their work as they're doing this? And what I'm going to do is I'll put the bit.ly in here again so that you can get to the slide deck and you can move around in it.
Hey, Scott.
Are we adding to the Google one or the Nearpod one?
I was hoping you were going to do it in the Nearpod, because then I can
Right
scroll
now,
through
the
and
Nearpod
show.
doesn't have the writing icon. I mean, the writing buttons.
So it's
I opened your Nearpod, and the toolbar that I normally would use to write is not there.
So Adam, did I do the draw feature correctly? How do they add a text box here?
I don't think you did the draw feature correctly, Scott. It's not there.
Yeah, it's not there, because I do this with my students all the time, and I'm like, oh wait, the button's not there that I normally push.
Okay, well, fudgesicle. Is there a way I can fix this, Adam, or should I just go to the Google Slides?
Do you have the Google Slides ready to go?
I do. They're right here in this window. So, and I just put a bit.ly to them so you can all take them. And what I would do, see, this is what it showed me. I added the draw it slide.
Huh.
right there. I don't know why it's not working in Nearpod, but all you really have to do is go to one of these blank ones and go to File, make a copy, and just use the selected slide. And let's call it Archetype Foursquare. And then you'll pop out your own little version that you can add pictures to, and I can just have you put a link to this in the chat. So what I wanted to do is give people a time to try and figure out how difficult or easy this is. And so using these character archetypes and your knowledge of Watergate, which I understand might need to be refreshed, just go through and pick a person or two and see if you can characterize them, see if you can find a historical picture of them, see if you can tell me an archetype they represent, tell me why, and then if you can name another figure throughout history or pop culture, you could just give a brief explanation there. So I'd like to
I'm sorry, I got to interrupt. I'm sorry to interrupt you again. The Google slideshow is saying it's view only.
Yes. So what you have to do is click on the slide you want to copy and go File, make a copy, and just copy that selected slide.
Okay, but don't you want them all in the same slideshow?
That's not going to happen. So I'm just going to ask you to put a link to your slide in the chat.
Oh,
and
okay.
Scroll through them that way. So now Heidi asks a great question. Are there any other links of archetypes, lists of archetypes that we might access? And so one of the first times I did this was with this French Revolution archetype. And what I did is I found 3 different lists. So this was a list of archetypal characters that John gave me, which I thought was very cute. It has a little, graphic of them, a little image of them, characteristics. This is a nice, perfect primer for understanding various archetypes. But then I wanted one that was more set to history. So for the French Revolution, I brainstormed a bunch of these archetypes, the martyr, the philosopher, the feminist. And I gave my students a list of people who would match these archetypes. But then I also found online a nice graphic that is kind of the yin and the yang archetype, a good archetype countered by a bad archetype. And so I thought this was useful too. And you really have a great amount of freedom. You might want to start with just 4 and 4 because you don't want to overpower your students. But if you give them 4 archetypes and maybe 5 or 6 characters and they have to sort them together, the good part about this protocol is the student discussions that happen. And you want those student discussions to be, well, animated and robust. And, that is, I think it's easy for you as you finished your unit of study to identify some archetypes that the students can clearly identify. So, okay, I need to go back to my original slides. I'm going to shut up, which is very difficult for me. I'm hoping you are making a copy of this and using the Watergate slide. I'm setting my timer. I'm going to stop sharing for a second so I can create a good example for you. All right, are you guys ready to flood my chat? Should I say 1, 2, 3 waterfall? And you can put all your work in there. Adam gave you a nice tip on how to make sure you said anyone with the link can view on your sharing settings if that's not your default. And, let's see, we'll pick a few. I see people are getting bumped in and out. I hope that's not my internet. Okay. So I'm just going to put my screen up and very quickly go through. So I would label Senator Baker as the investigator. My rationale for saying why he's the investigator is he asked hard questions like what did the president know and when did he know it? And so helped really focus the investigation on Nixon. My other example of an investigator is Sherlock Holmes, who used his powers of deduction to solve crimes. And Baker certainly would be one of the people who tightened the focus on Nixon as someone who knew about Watergate and which of course wind up with the president resigning. All right, so let's see. I'm going to click on Heidi's. Let's see if I can bring it in. Heidi says Woodward and Bernstein are also the investigators. Over the years, Woodward and Bernstein put together pieces of the story, got to the bottom of it. Great movie, All the President's Men. Assistant principals all over America trying to determine which students are responsible for encroaching on each other's slides and which students are responsible for actually doing the work we assign them. Thank you, Heidi. I appreciate you sharing. Let's check out Adam's. So Adam's giving us the peace sign and saying Nixon is the shadow. I thought a lot of people might say Nixon was the crook, right? So he's the shadow because he goes down the wrong path and does he instruct people to break into the Democratic National Headquarters, or was he just tangentially aware of it? Ooh, and a nice connection to history, Roger Stone. So nice work, Adam. Let's see, Mr. Walker. Okay. Mark Felt, Deep Throat himself, who we didn't really know about until after he passed away. So why would we call Deep Throat the listener? He worked for the FBI. He had information from FBI interviews that he secretly passed on to Woodward and Bernstein. Dr. Watson listens to Sherlock Holmes, the investigator. Look at that, Mr. Walker. We're on the same page. So, Deb, I see your question. Hold on, let me get back to my my deck. I want to be mindful of your time. We have about 5 minutes left. So again, I have given you guys a couple of Archetype Foursquare templates here that you may file, make a copy, and keep and modify to your heart's content. I also thought this was very interesting because I like to sequence a bunch of edu protocols over like a 5 or 10-day period. And so for this, I asked my students to tell me which edu protocol they thought they learned the most from. Can I make this bigger? Yeah. Oh, that doesn't look good. Yeah. So you can kind of look through some of their comments about which activities they enjoy the most. I will say with this archetype analysis, the students definitely need practice. If you make the first one about, I don't know, rap stars or TV stars or movies, students will be able to identify that stuff very easily. Then when you're broadening it into history, I would probably give them a smaller number than I just gave you. Like I gave you a really hard one, a high school, Watergate with what, 8 or 10 of these archetypes and a bunch of abstract people from history. You would really have to have a lot of information on Watergate in order to do this, which is why I like using the Archetype Foursquare as sort of a culminating activity. I really think of it as an alternative assessment. And the good part is they're kind of coaching up each other. So as they take each other through the examples and they explain their rationale to each other, the kid who maybe didn't pay good attention and didn't do all the work, he's actually learning from the other students that may have more information. So, and that I think is the most important C in the 4 C's of the edu protocols, the collaboration piece. Do not cut your instructions short by shortchanging the collaboration. Make the students have these discussions. I walk around the room and listen to my groups of 4 kids having arguments. I have to mediate. I have to break in when they're getting too loud or too excited. And I have found the Archetype Foursquare to be a great new protocol for me with my students this year. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you in the Edu Protocols community about how you use it. So use the Edu Protocols hashtag and put out any examples. Please copy me or tag me. I am at Scott M. Petrie on Twitter. And what I love about the Edu Protocols community is we share a lot. Some might accuse us of oversharing. So if you're in California and you want some more information, I'm presenting at the California Social Studies Association, California Social Studies Conference in March on this. And then John, Adam, and I will also be presenting at Spring Q. I'm looking forward to that because I get to meet Adam in real life after mostly only talking to him over Zoom for the past year. So I'll now open it up for any questions. I see someone says, where do you have students cite their sources, Deb? I might not add that for this. This isn't really a research protocol. Well, if I'm doing the Iron Chef version of this, I would have usually given them a document to look up their person on, or in my case, I use what's called our LAUSD digital library, which takes them only to databases, no Google. And if I'm asking them to research that person's individual biographical facts and then characterize them as an archetype, typically I wouldn't ask them to cite a source for that because this is just sort of a culminating task, sort of an alternative assessment to see how good are they at making these connections and comparisons between historical figures and the present day or pop culture. So I hope that answers that. Angela, how's the weather out there in Kentucky? Are you guys still freezing? Maybe we're not able to mute. All right, so in New Jersey, very cold, but things are starting to melt. That's good. Well, I'll tell you, living in Los Angeles for the past few decades, if it drops below 60, I am looking for a sweater. I can't imagine anybody living back where it is below freezing. It's not like there's a Berlin Wall. Come to Southern California, people. Come to sunny Southern California. So there you go, Rich. Thank you. All right. Well, if there are no questions, I think I should let you go and grab lunch before our next session. I'll stick around, but the rest of you take some time off for good behavior. I hope you enjoyed learning about the Archetype Foursquare protocol, and I hope to see you using it on Twitter. Thank you, everyone. Adam, what's the temperature for you today? It's just like Zoom school, teaching into the void.
We started off at, what did we start at this morning? About 4 degrees this morning.
Woo. And has it warmed up to 0?
So we're up to about 19 right now. So.
Okay, practically spring. All right, well, thanks again, everybody. If there are no questions, I'll end the session. Thank you, Angela. I hope to meet you too. And you guys all enjoy the rest of the Edu Protocols conference, and I look forward to seeing you online. Thanks, everyone.